Hello, welcome back to the Young Professionals Math Bootcamp. This is lesson 3. We're talking about fraction basics. So fractions are something that you want to understand what a fraction is before moving on to adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions. So the first things that we're going to talk about, and you can look at this first slide, we have the basics. So comparing fractions, what are improper fractions, what are mixed numbers or mixed fractions, and we will talk a little bit about how to reduce fractions. This first picture shows us that a fraction is less than 1. So just like with the decimals, when we set everything to the right is less than 1, the same thing is true of a fraction, of a proper fraction. So here you have a picture of a whole circle divided into thirds. So each piece on its own is 1/3. So and I usually give the example of a pizza. If you have a pizza divided into 3 pieces and you've eaten one of those 3 pieces, you've eaten 1/3. That's less than 1 whole. So if you have a proper fraction, it's less than 1. Our next slide, we start to talk about comparing fractions. So if you look at the triangle on the left, now that triangle is divided into 4 pieces. Each piece is 1/4. The purple part that's shaded, purple, that would be 3/4 because 3 out of 4 pieces are shaded. The triangle on the right, it's the same triangle, but now we only have one that is shaded purple. So the part that is shaded purple represents 1/4. If you compare the 2 fractions, and if you're looking at the purple shaded parts, you could see that 3/4 is greater than 1/4. Sometimes that's a tricky concept for people to understand, but if you see it visually, it makes more sense. And also, just to remember that that greater or less than sign, it points to the smaller number, or in this case, the smaller fraction. So the greater or less than sign points to the smaller number, and it opens to the larger number. So I'm going to show you another representation to understand comparing fractions. Actually, I'm going to leave it right here. So you want to remember that this magnet by itself, it's one rectangle. It's the same exact size as these next 2 together. So for example, I can just simply take this rectangle and place it on top. And you can tell it's the same exact size. This one is not divided, but this one's divided into halves. Same thing with this next rectangle. They're all the same exact size. So I can do this with each and every line of magnets that I have here. They're all the same size to begin with. The only difference is that they're divided into a different number of pieces. So if I'm comparing one whole, let's pretend it's a candy bar, one whole candy bar versus half a candy bar, it's clear that half is less. If I compare that to 1/3, you can see 1/3 is less, and it goes on and on. So 1/4 is less than 1/3. It gets smaller. So you just have to remember, the more pieces you divide something into, each piece is a smaller value. Now we are going to look at this slide that talks about the difference between proper fractions versus improper fractions. So just a reminder that the numerator is the number on top of the fraction, and the denominator is the number on the bottom. So in a proper fraction, if the number on top, the numerator, is smaller, and the number on the bottom is larger, that makes it a proper fraction. And again, this is less than 1. So if you look at 6/7, for example, if you have something divided into 7 pieces, and you've only taken 6, you've taken less than 1. So a proper fraction is always less than 1 whole unit. Improper fractions are the opposite. If your numerator is larger than your denominator, that would be considered an improper fraction. The difference between proper and improper is that improper is greater than 1, because now you have something divided into 5 pieces. But if you've taken 8 pieces, then you've taken more than 1 whole unit. So those are just some examples of the difference between proper and improper. Looking at improper fractions takes us to the next topic, which is mixed fractions or mixed numbers. So we're going to go to the board and look at just another example of what an improper fraction looks like and a mixed fraction. So bear with me in my drawings. They're not 100% accurate, but imagine that these 3 rectangles are candy bars. So you have 3 different candy bars, but they're all the same size. They're all divided into 3 pieces, the same. So even though you have 3, when you write it out as a fraction, your denominator is still going to be 3 because you have 3 pieces in 1 candy bar. If I think about how many pieces I have taken, I'm just going to shade in the pieces that represent what I've taken. How many pieces are there altogether? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 out of 3. So clearly I've taken 1 whole candy bar and then 2 more pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've taken 5 out of 3. So this would be considered an improper fraction because my denominator is smaller than my numerator. This is how it's written as an improper. But you also can write it as a mixed number, which is the way you're going to see it more in real life. So if I look at how many candy bars I've eaten, again, I've eaten 1 whole candy bar and then 2 more pieces. So I've eaten 1 and 2/3. And again, the 3 is on the bottom because each piece is divided into thirds. Let's look at this example. I'm just going to draw it a little bit differently. So now I have candy bars that are divided into 4 pieces. So now if I'm writing my fraction, each candy bar is divided into 4 pieces, so that is my denominator. Because if I'm looking at just 1 candy bar, it's 4 pieces. And now I'm going to shade in just a few more. So now I've eaten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. So I've eaten 7, but there are only 4 pieces in 1 candy bar, so I've eaten more than 1 candy bar. Now I'm going to change that to a mixed number. 4 goes into 7 one time with 3 left over, so that's 1 3/4. So again, if you move these around, and if I placed this piece here and then put these together, you would see that it's 1 3/4 candy bar. And we'll talk more about how to go from improper to mixed and mixed to improper. And again, you need to know this because when you multiply and divide with fractions, you have to know how to change this to this improper. And then when you find your answer, you have to change this back to a mixed number. So you want to be able to transfer back and forth. And again, if you think about it in real life examples, if you're baking or cooking, the recipe is not going to say you need 7/4 cups of flour. It's going to say you need 1 3/4. But they mean the same thing. It's just that in real world examples, you're going to see this more often. But you have to know how to go from one to the next. So this next slide gives you another example of what a mixed number or a mixed fraction looks like. And it's a whole number plus another fraction. So those triangles, there are 3 triangles. Imagine they're all divided into 4 pieces each. So each triangle is divided into fourths. So 4 is your bottom number. But you have 2 whole triangles that are filled with blue, and then 1/4 of another one. So that's 2 1/4. 5 3/4. So this example is given in money. Again, 3/4, think of it like 3/4. 3/4 is worth 75 cents. So that would be $5.75. This next slide, again, I usually give examples of food because we can all relate to it. And I love pizza. So here is a pizza that's sliced into 8 pieces. So again, each piece by itself is 1/8. If you add all of that together, you have 8 pieces, which is 1 whole pizza. So in this example, if you're looking at the yellowish pieces there, if you count all of those, you'll see that you have 18 slices. So if you're writing that as a fraction, remember your bottom number is still going to be 8 because each pizza is divided into 8 pieces. So always look at just one unit of whatever you're using. However many pieces that's divided into, that's your bottom number. So you have 8 on the bottom, but you actually have 18 pieces that are shaded yellow. Now this breaks the problem down a little bit more, and we're going to write it on the board too, just so you can see it step by step. So with these PowerPoint presentations, they're to help you follow along with the video, but they're not going to give you all the information or all the answers. So you want to make sure when you're following along that you write your own notes and write the problem out as you go also, because that's the best way to make sure you understand it. If you're just watching and not really thinking about it, you might miss a step. So always make sure that you take your own notes and do the problem as we go. So looking at this pizza example, okay, we said we had 18 pieces out of 8. So again, 8's our bottom number because one pizza is divided into 8ths, but we've eaten 18. Or all together as a family, you've eaten 18. So you want to change this to a mixed number. There are 2 things you need to do, and you can do it in either order. I like to reduce first. So you always have to reduce a fraction. Your answer choices are always going to be given in a reduced form. So you have to figure out what can you divide both 18 and 8 by. Again, this goes back to understanding your basic division and your basic multiplication. If you're really comfortable with that, you'll be able to see this a little bit easier. So I want to think about the number 8 and think about what can I divide into 8. But it also has to work for 18. So if I think about my factors of 8, so factors means what numbers can I multiply to get to this? So I can do 1 times 8. That gives me 8. I can do 2 times 4. That gives me 8. These are my only factors of 8 because I can't divide 3 into 8. I can't divide 5 into 8 with it coming to a whole number. So these are my factors of 8. Now, which of these numbers can I also divide into 18? I can't divide 8 into 18. I won't get a whole number. 4 is not going to work, but 2 works. I can divide both numbers by 2. So 18 divided by 2, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So now I have 9 divided by 4. It's still improper. I want to change that to a mixed number. Again, because if I tell somebody that we ate 9/4 of a pizza, they might say, what does that really mean? It's easier if you put it in mixed fraction or mixed number form. So 9 divided by 4. Again, you can practice this by hand. You can also do it with a calculator, which is the way we have it on the PowerPoint. If you do 9 divided by 4, 4 goes into 9 twice with 1 left over. That gives you 2 1/4. If you did it on the calculator, you would get 2.25. So again, you want to make sure, whichever way you do it, you know that these 2 numbers are equal. So 0.25 is the same thing as 1/4. A quarter, this is a quarter, this is a quarter. Because again, your answer might be in decimal form or it might be in fraction form. So this is something I would practice by hand, but also on your calculator. And this next PowerPoint just goes into it a little bit more. It explains how 2.25 is the same thing as 2 1/4. And again, this is the reduced answer. So you can change it to a mixed number and then reduce it. I think it's a lot easier to reduce and then change it to a mixed number. So hopefully that helps you get started with your fraction basics. Again, you want to practice this so that when you move on to calculating with fractions, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, you'll have a better understanding. You'll be able to work through the questions a lot quicker. See you in the next lesson.